In the spring of 2019, an elite unit of 18 soldiers from the Indian Army's mountaineering expedition team embarked on what was meant to be a solemn and symbolic journey rather than a mysterious one. Departing from Delhi weeks earlier to honor the legacy of past military achievements through a 2-month commemorative trek to Mount Makalu, the 5th highest mountain on Earth. A colossal and unforgiving giant rising more than 27,800 feet into the sky along the remote borders of Nepal and Tibet, where history, myth, and survival intertwine. This expedition, like many before it, was not merely about conquest of nature, but about reinforcing discipline, resilience, and unity within a force that has spent decades guarding a nation shaped by colonial rule, violent partition, and persistent regional conflict. For since India's independence in 1947 and the painful division that created Pakistan, the subcontinent has endured mass migration, political upheaval, religious bloodshed, and repeated wars, leaving the Indian Army in a constant state of readiness, trained not only for conventional warfare, but for survival in the world's most hostile environments. And it is for this reason that its mountaineering units are among the most rigorously prepared high-altitude teams anywhere on the planet. Led by Major Manoj Joshi and consisting of 4 officers, 2 junior commissioned officers, and 11 highly trained soldiers, the team began its ascent through the Himalayan foothills. On April 2nd, navigating treacherous terrain, thin air, and biting cold as they advanced steadily toward Makalu Base Camp, fully aware that even a minor mistake at such elevations could prove fatal. And by April 9th, after days of grueling movement through the isolated valleys of Makalubar National Park, they reached an altitude of approximately 4,500 meters at a waypoint known as Longamalakarka, a location chosen specifically for high-altitude acclimatization, where the body is forced to adapt slowly to oxygen deprivation, lest altitude sickness claim life silently in the night. It was here, amid frozen silence broken only by wind and shifting ice, that the expedition took an unexpected turn as several members of the team, while surveying the surrounding area near their campsite, stumbled upon something that instantly shattered the routine familiarity of military discipline and survival training. Something so profoundly out of place that it sent a chill deeper than the Himalayan cold itself, for etched clearly into the hardened snow were enormous footprints, far larger than any human track, stretching away from the camp in a deliberate, almost purposeful line, as though whatever had made them had walked upright and unafraid through the frozen wilderness. Upon closer inspection, using standard mountaineering tools, the soldiers measured the largest of these impressions and found them to be approximately 32 inches long and 15 inches wide dimensions, more than 3 times the size of an average human foot, and even more unsettling was the spacing between the prints, which suggested a stride length of nearly 4 feet, a distance impossible for a normal man to maintain while walking, especially at such altitude, leading the experienced soldiers to one inescapable conclusion. Whatever had left these tracks was not only massive, but powerful, upright, and entirely unknown. The footprints did not resemble the scattered gait of 4-legged animals commonly found in the region, nor did they show signs of claws or irregular movement, instead forming a linear trail that implied balance, intent, and confidence, characteristics disturbingly close to human movement, and for men trained to identify enemy tracks, animal behavior, and environmental anomalies. This discovery was profoundly unsettling because it challenged both logic and experience. And as night fell over Longamalakarka and the temperature plummeted, the soldiers found themselves lying awake in their tents, surrounded by darkness, ice, and the unspoken realization that somewhere beyond the reach of their camp lights, something immense and unexplained had passed silently through their world, marking the beginning of a mystery that would soon capture global attention and revive one of the oldest legends known to mankind, the legend of the Yeti. As dawn broke over the jagged ridges of the Makalubar National Park, the Indian Army expedition team awoke with the frozen wind biting through their layers, each soldier aware that the mysterious footprints discovered the night before had fundamentally altered the tone of their mission. For while their trek was officially a commemorative exercise in mountaineering and high-altitude training, the soldiers could not ignore that the terrain they traversed had long been the stage of whispers, myths, and centuries-old legends of a formidable creature known locally as the Yeti, a being described in hushed tones by Sherpas, villagers, and explorers alike as a massive, bipedal, ape-like entity capable of traversing glaciers, leaping across crevasses, and vanishing into dense forest and snowfields with a speed and stealth that defied human logic. These accounts, recorded sporadically over the past 2 centuries, had frequently been dismissed by the scientific community as exaggeration or error. Yet within the Indian Army, particularly among seasoned mountaineers, stories of unexplained tracks, strange howls in the night, and fleeting shadows were treated with a mix of professional caution and respectful curiosity, because the men understood better than most that survival in the Himalayas required an awareness of everything that moved in those peaks, from avalanches to wildlife, and perhaps, as the footprints suggested, something far more extraordinary. Historically, the Yeti legend had been given credibility by numerous Western explorers, beginning with British residents in Nepal in the early 19th century who documented encounters with local hunters terrified by a wild man with long dark hair, to Scottish explorers and Indian Army officers in the late 1800s like Major Lawrence Waddell, who, while ascending Sikkim's snow-laden ridges at 17,000 feet, observed enormous footprints and was informed by his guides that these belonged to a creature capable of preying on humans, whose long hair could blind it when descending slopes, advice that seemed fantastical yet resonated with the soldiers' disciplined logic, for the footprint size and stride matched known regional fauna. Over the decades, more sightings filtered into both local folklore and military reports. In the 1920s, British Mount Everest reconnaissance teams encountered strange dark shapes moving across snowfields near the North Face, while Greek photographers on Indian geological expeditions claimed to observe naked upright figures rummaging through rhododendron bushes, and Russian reconnaissance units in Mongolia during wartime reported firing upon massive, red-haired anthropoid figures later identified as Almas, close relatives in description to the Himalayan Yeti. Despite these accounts, Western skepticism remained high, frequently attributing tracks and sightings to bears, misidentified shadows, or hoaxes. Yet for the Indian soldiers at Longa-Malakarka, such dismissals were irrelevant, because the tangible evidence lay directly beneath their boots, measurable, stark, and undeniable against the pristine snow. The expedition team meticulously photographed the footprints, measured the stride lengths, and recorded their observations in detailed logs, fully aware that what they had discovered might reignite the debate over the existence of an elusive, bipedal creature across Asia. And while social media and news outlets might treat their findings with mockery or incredulity, the soldiers understood that the history of these mountains, the testimony of locals who have lived in symbiosis with the peaks for generations, and the centuries of scattered European and Asian reports formed a vast tapestry suggesting that something extraordinary had persisted unseen in the folds of snow and rock. With this knowledge in mind, the soldiers pressed onward toward Makalu Base Camp, maintaining heightened vigilance, their training amplifying every crack of ice, shadow, and movement into potential signals. Yet even amidst their rigorous discipline, a quiet sense of awe settled over the team, as they realized that the expedition had evolved from a tribute to past achievements into a direct confrontation with one of the world's most enduring mysteries, a challenge to the boundary between myth and reality, leaving them to ponder not just the physical obstacles of the Himalayas, but the profound possibility that the stories they had been taught to question might indeed conceal an ancient truth, and that in the endless white wilderness, humanity was perhaps not the sole inhabitant capable of mastery, endurance, and silent observation. By the time the Indian Army mountaineering team reached the higher slopes approaching Makalu Base Camp, the haunting footprints from Longa-Malakarka had become the focal point of every decision discussion, and cautious movement, for what began as a routine acclimatization exercise had slowly transformed into a tense investigation into the unknown, compelling even the most disciplined soldiers to acknowledge the possibility that something extraordinary existed beyond the veil of snow, fog, and rock. Each step forward demanded constant vigilance, eyes scanning every ridge, crevice, and overhang for anomalies that might betray the presence of an unseen creature, while their radios crackled with intermittent reports from scouts detailing tracks, disturbed snow, and broken branches in patterns inconsistent with bears or other Himalayan fauna. The soldiers' training and observation and survival amplifying the significance of every irregularity. Yet none of them had expected the scale, consistency, and sophistication of the footprints, which were unlike any natural or human-made impression. For the linear alignment, uniform depth, and stride length suggested not just size but intelligence, deliberate movement, and awareness of the terrain, qualities that demanded respect and caution. As the team meticulously documented the tracks, photographing them, measuring their length, width, and spacing, and mapping their direction, the soldiers began to feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, an almost palpable tension that seemed to emanate from the surrounding peaks themselves, as though the mountains were holding their breath along with the men. And in the evenings, around the crackling tents, discussions became hushed, speculative, and cautious, ranging from historical Yeti reports to the unexplained disturbances recorded by earlier expeditions, such as those of Frank S. Smythe in Tibet, Nikolaus Tombatsi along the Gemma Glacier, and Russian reconnaissance units encountering Almas, each account reinforcing the notion that the Himalayas had long been home to beings operating beyond the understanding of conventional science. One night, as a full moon bathed the jagged snowfields in silver light, a pair of soldiers patrolling near the edge of their camp reported movement at a distance, a dark, upright silhouette gliding between boulders and shadows, vanishing as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only faint traces of snow disturbance. The observation, sending a ripple of excitement and apprehension through the team. For while their training demanded rational explanations, each man recognized that their own eyes had witnessed something defying immediate explanation. And yet, the terrain provided no opportunity for a traditional pursuit, forcing them to rely on patience, documentation, and analysis rather than instinctive confrontation. The team's logbooks, already filled with precise altitudes, temperatures, and GPS coordinates, now began recording meticulous accounts of anomalous tracks, patterns inconsistent with any known bear or large mammal, noting features such as toe arrangement, stride length, depth, and the impression of weight distribution, suggesting a creature capable of agile movement despite enormous mass. And these observations, corroborated by multiple soldiers, formed an unspoken consensus. They were dealing with a bipedal entity of unprecedented proportions, and the reality of its existence could no longer be dismissed lightly. Even in the face of centuries of skepticism from outside observers, media ridicule, and scientific doubt. As the days passed, the soldiers developed a rhythm that balanced routine survival, altitude adjustments, ration management, and safety precautions, with near-constant monitoring of the surrounding environment, scanning ice cliffs, overhanging ledges, and distant ridgelines for subtle signs of motion, all while sharing quiet stories around the tents of past encounters with the Yeti, Almas, and other enigmatic bipedal creatures from the Himalayas to Central Asia. The collective knowledge of explorers, historians, and local inhabitants merging with the soldiers' own acute observations into a disciplined yet cautious awareness that something ancient and intelligent had chosen these peaks as its domain. And though the evidence remained indirect, tracks, shadows, fleeting movements, the sheer consistency, magnitude, and geographical correlation of the findings lent them a weight that could not be ignored, compelling the soldiers to continue their ascent toward Makalu Base Camp with a heightened sense of respect, tension, and curiosity, fully aware that the mountains they had trained to conquer were simultaneously the refuge and hunting ground of a mysterious entity whose existence might forever challenge humanity's understanding of life in the high Himalayas, and that each step taken, each photograph and measurement logged, brought them closer to confronting one of the oldest, most enduring mysteries of the natural world, the legend of the Yeti, alive and unseen, waiting silently in the shadows among the peaks. By mid-April 2019, the Indian Army expedition team finally approached the formidable slopes of Makalu Base Camp, their muscles aching, lungs burning with every shallow breath, and minds weighed down by the enigma that had grown around the colossal footprints discovered weeks earlier at Longamalakarka. The soldiers, trained in reconnaissance, survival, and meticulous observation, understood that their journey was no longer merely a commemorative exercise or a test of physical endurance, but had become an investigation into one of the Himalayas' most enduring mysteries: the existence of the Yeti, a creature of legend whose presence had been recorded in fragmented accounts for nearly 2 centuries, from British residents and Indian Army officers in Nepal in the early 1800s, to explorers like Major Lawrence Waddell in Sikkim, and later account from Western mountaineers, Russian reconnaissance units encountering Almas, and local Himalayan villagers who had passed down stories of wild, bipedal beings capable of astonishing feats of strength, endurance, and agility. Upon reaching the base camp, the team meticulously analyzed the surrounding snowfields and slopes, comparing the tracks they had followed over weeks with historical data, noting size, stride, depth, and gait, all of which reinforced the possibility of a bipedal creature moving upright with precision and intelligence, a being far beyond the size of any known regional fauna. And while Western science often dismissed such reports as misidentifications of Himalayan bears, experimental hoaxes, or simple folklore, the soldiers, grounded in decades of high-altitude training and environmental expertise, found the footprints inconsistent with known wildlife, as the depth suggested a weight and mass beyond a bear's typical distribution, and the linear, purposeful pattern implied deliberate movement rather than random wandering. The team took extreme care documenting each print, photographing them from multiple angles, recording GPS coordinates, measuring the exact width, length, and spacing of each stride, and comparing them with historical photographs and records of alleged Yeti tracks from previous expeditions, aware that these findings could spark scientific interest, skepticism, or public intrigue, depending on how they were presented, and that despite centuries of legend, the truth remained hidden in the Himalayas' remote and treacherous terrain, accessible only to those willing to risk exposure to cold, altitude, and the unknown. In addition to the physical evidence, the team began cataloging anecdotal observations, noting sounds carried by the wind, shadows glimpsed between ridges, and subtle disturbances in snow and foliage, all carefully logged to provide as complete a record as possible, acknowledging that even disciplined soldiers are not immune to the psychological weight of isolation in such extreme conditions. Yet relying on their rigorous training, they maintained a professional detachment, interpreting each anomaly scientifically while recognizing the pattern that suggested intelligence behind the movements. The expedition's findings were intended for both military records and potential scientific review, as the Indian Army understood that public and academic scrutiny would inevitably be skeptical, perhaps mocking, yet the consistency, scale, and precision of the footprints could not easily be dismissed as mere imagination. And when combined with the historical tapestry of sightings across the Himalayas, Central Asia, and even beyond to regions in Mongolia and Russia, a compelling argument emerged that the legend of the Yeti may indeed be grounded in biological reality rather than mere myth. As the soldiers settled in a base camp for the evening, exhausted but vigilant, the shadow of possibility lingered over the campfire discussions and log entries, a recognition that their expedition had captured tangible evidence supporting centuries of oral tradition, historical reports, and scientific curiosity, bridging the gap between myth and observable phenomena, while simultaneously underscoring the vast, unexplored wilderness of the high Himalayas, where humanity's reach is limited and where perhaps a massive, intelligent, elusive creature moves silently, waiting to remain unseen, reminding the soldiers that even in an age of satellites, drones, and global connectivity, the mountains preserve secrets that defy measurement, documentation, or easy explanation, and that the story of the Yeti, once relegated to folklore, might finally find its chapter in modern evidence through the meticulous observations of highly trained soldiers willing to confront the unknown at the very edge of human endurance. As the Indian Army mountaineering team descended from Muckalu Base Camp after weeks of grueling climbing, extreme weather, and painstaking documentation of the enormous footprints, they carried not only the physical exhaustion of traversing one of the world's most unforgiving terrains, but also the intangible weight of having confronted one of the Himalayas' oldest and most enduring mysteries. For while their mission had begun as a commemorative exercise celebrating the courage and resilience of the Indian Armed Forces, it had evolved into a first-hand investigation into the possibility that the legendary Yeti, a massive, bipedal, ape-like creature reported in countless historical accounts from British residents and explorers in the 19th century to modern-day local inhabitants and previous Indian expeditions, was not merely a figment of folklore, but a tangible presence in the high Himalayan wilderness, a creature whose footprints, measuring over 30 inches in length and 15 inches in width and stride lengths approaching 4 feet, could not be dismissed as ordinary bear tracks, snow disturbances, or myth, and whose subtle yet deliberate movements through ice fields, rocky ridges, and mist-shrouded valleys suggested intelligence, agility, and familiarity with a terrain that even most highly trained soldiers found treacherous. Upon returning to lower altitudes, the team meticulously compiled their measurements, photographs, and notes into detailed expedition logs, recognizing that outside observers, from journalists to scientists, might react with skepticism, ridicule, or disbelief, yet the soldiers understood that the consistency of the tracks, the corroborating observations of multiple trained personnel, and the alignment with centuries of historical sightings collectively constituted an extraordinary body of evidence, one that demanded serious consideration despite the lack of a live encounter or captured specimen. And while Western science has long debated the existence of the Yeti, often dismissing reports as misidentified bears, hoaxes, or exaggerations, the Indian Army team's documentation, combined with historical accounts such as those of Major Lawrence Waddell, Frank S. Smythe, Nicolaus Tambatsi, Russian Almaz sightings, and local Himalayan lore, offered a continuity of evidence bridging legend and modern observation, reminding all that the mountains have long been a sanctuary for life, forms unseen and largely undisturbed by humanity, where ancient knowledge, oral traditions, and scientific curiosity converge, and that even in an age of satellites, drones, and instant global communication, these remote peaks preserve secrets resistant to verification or dismissal. In reflecting upon their journey, the soldiers acknowledged the duality of their experience. The expedition was simultaneously a testament to human endurance, discipline, and camaraderie, and a subtle reminder of humanity's limited understanding of the natural world. For the evidence of the Yeti, be it footprints, fleeting shadows, or subtle environmental signs, challenge perceptions of what was possible, blending adventure, history, and mystery into an unforgettable chapter of personal and collective memory. And when the Indian Army later shared select findings on social media to inspire scientific inquiry and public interest, the reaction ranged from mockery to genuine curiosity, illustrating the persistent tension between skepticism and belief. Yet, the men who had endured altitude, ice, and months of isolation knew the truth of what they had observed, and that the footprints, carefully cataloged and analyzed, were a tangible link to an ancient presence whose legend had survived centuries of doubt, war, exploration, and cultural change. A silent guardian of the Himalayan wilderness that continued to elude direct human contact while asserting its existence through the undeniable, frozen traces left behind. And in this way, the 2019 expedition had not only honored the legacy of the Indian Army's history, but also contributed to a global, ongoing dialogue about the boundaries of human knowledge, the persistence of myth in the face of evidence, and the enduring possibility that the world's most remote mountains are home to creatures who watch, move, and survive unseen, waiting for those disciplined and courageous enough to follow their trail, measure their presence, and wonder at the mysterious and magnificent world beyond. Our ordinary perception,